Welcome to Tales from the Bridge. This is episode number 99. Kate Trefry is on the show. Kate was an awesome guest. We're so happy that she stopped by to join us on the bridge. Kate is one of the writers of Stranger Things, the Netflix TV show that everyone knows about. She is also the writer of the new hit play Stranger Things, The First Shadow, which is playing in London right now. Soon to be on Broadway. They're adapting it. And we definitely talk about that, so stay tuned for that. This was a fantastic conversation. Stick around for the whole thing because we have more fun the longer we go on this one. Thank you, Kate. This was a lot of fun for all of us, so we hope you enjoy it. Lots to come with Tales from the Bridge. Next episode is our 100th episode. We're super happy that so many of you have been listening to the show for this long, and we're at our 100th episode. It means a lot to us. It's an important episode, so thank you so much. Please join us for that. And then Robert Silverberg, the legendary sci-fi fantasy writer, he's on the show after our 100th episode. And we talked to him recently. Such a cool guy. He was a great reference for just talking about the history of science fiction and being back at the Hugos in 1953 and so many cool things. So join us for that one. Thank you for listening today. Thank you, Kate, for joining us. All right, let's make our way over to the bridge.
Kate Trefry is a screenwriter and director. For the last 7 years, she's been a staff writer on the Netflix TV show Stranger Things, and recently has become a rather successful playwright. Kate is the writer of the play Stranger Things, The First Shadow, which opened December 14th at the Phoenix Theatre in London's West End. The play is set in 1959 and explores the history of the Upside Down's link to the town of Hawkins, Indiana. In February, the production won the What's on Stage Award for Best New Play, and this past weekend, it won the Laurence Olivier Award for Best Entertainment and Comedy Play. Congratulations, Kate, and thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you. My pleasure.
So how are you doing?
I'm pretty pumped. I just got back from London, where I got my little statue.
Oh.
And I'm a little jet lagged, but I'm walking on cloud nine.
This is the second award that you guys have got for this one. Is that right?
Yes, I was not there for the first one, and I haven't seen it because Steven is hoarding it, but eventually I'm going to get that also.
You're now fully a playwright. Is it weird to call yourself a playwright?
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a playwright by any stretch of the imagination.
You would just call yourself an award-winning playwright.
Yeah, I mean, Olivier award winning. No, I had never written a play before this, and I came in to write the show, and I was just surrounded by like an army of people who helped me realize that vision on stage. So I'm forever indebted to every single department head and the directors. It was very collaborative.
Right, for sure. It takes a whole team to put something like that together. Let's back up a bit and let's actually talk about what the play is based on, which is, of course, the famous television show Stranger Things. You've been a staff writer there for 7 years, is that right?
Yeah, I think in July it'll be 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but this is like kind of all I remember anymore. I can't believe it's ending, and I have no idea what's going to happen after that.
The freelance life, I understand. I'm a freelancer too, so I get it.
Yeah, it's been very nice to have a home with these people that I really love working with. I can't imagine working with anyone else. So, yeah, I have some plans. I have some ideas, some stuff that I'm working on, but it will be sad. I am already sad.
Well, the office, you said that you're in the Upside Down production office, or yeah? And that's where all the magic happens. Is that right for the show?
I mean, that's where all the like that's where it all starts, I guess. We're definitely there are much more magical places in Stranger Things land to visit than the writer's room. But yeah, this is where it all starts. We have a pinball machine and a ping pong table. And that's and a bunch of gum, and that's pretty much all that's here. It's empty besides that.
I heard that you guys often wrote with dogs. I don't know if you have any dogs in the office.
We were banned from bringing any dogs to this office because of how out of control the dogs got at the last office. It was like there were like four people and like seven dogs, and it was just like it was just too much. Like the dogs were farting, the dogs were, biting each other. It was just like it was a mess.
Nothing worse than farting dogs.
I mean, you would think until the dogs are gone and the farts continue, and then there is
No one to
something.
blame them on.
Can I ask you about how you got on the show? For those of our listeners who don't know, what was the story with you starting working with the Duffer Brothers?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty out there, I think, as far as like career paths go. I wrote a script in 2013. That was my first script, called Pure O, about having really intense, intrusive thoughts and obsessive compulsive disorder. It was like violent but fun, and kind of romantic, but still violent. Um, and it was on the blacklist, and I kind of like did my rounds, and I was like, I did it. Like, here I am, Hollywood. And then I didn't get a paying job again for like 10 years. Um, sorry, I didn't get a writing job. I did lots of other jobs. Yeah, I think all the other jobs that you could do as a person in Los Angeles. I frosted sugar cookies for a long time. I made
Cool.
stones. I did landscaping. Like I worked at like a brunch bar, which I think
Isn't
was the bottom.
isn't that par for the course? Like, isn't that typically the way I feel like?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, like I always tell people that if you want to try to start writing, then give yourself 10 years, because I think that's kind of what it takes. But it's still shocking when
Hmm,
you're like on year 8 and you're like, ooh,
I can
should
only
I not
imagine.
be doing this? Like I want to have kids and like, a house or like something.
But your screenplay you said was on the blacklist, and that's a real thing. What is that all about for those who don't know?
It's a list that's compiled by like all the executives in Hollywood that is their favorite unproduced scripts of the year. So they all vote on their favorite like specs that they read. And then if you get enough votes, you get on the list. And then whatever gets the most votes is one, two, three, and goes down and down. And I have actually had 2 scripts on the blacklist, and yet still no impact on my life except for a fun after party. I pretty much gave up on Hollywood, and I moved in with my parents-in-law in Alaska, where I'm from, and was still working, still writing, but like officially had given up and was just like skinny dipping in Alaska. And I was like, this could be a life. And then my manager was like, oh, did you see the trailer for Stranger Things? The Duffer Brothers want to meet with you, who that name meant nothing at that point. And I was like, cool name. uh, and then, yeah, we had this Zoom where I like presented like really poorly. I was like really depressed and like aggressive. And they asked me what my process was, and I said, there is no process. It's just chaos and horror, and Hollywood is terrible, and nothing makes any sense. And they're like, we'd like to fly you in, ma'am. And they flew me in like 2 days later.
Because you
Um,
told the truth.
I mean, some horrible part of me connected with some horrible part of them. And yeah, and then once I got here, there was no way there was no way anyone was gonna get me out.
That
Um,
sounds like a rom-com, a tagline for a rom-com from the Upside Down. Some horrible part of me connected with some
yeah,
horrible part of them.
that's really all we do here, is like share horrors. Um, and like it's been, like I said, we've been together for a long time, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else working with anybody else. I love them. They're, some of my best friends now. And I've just had more and more fun every year on the show.
And you've written some of the episodes yourself. Others you contribute indifferently. What's that general process? Like, how does that work, even if you're not listed, credited as the as the writer of a show?
Yeah, well, the way that our writers' room works is all of the writers in the Duffer Brothers, we all get together and we brainstorm and then break out the outline for the whole season together. And then we break out each episode, we outline each episode together, like pretty extensively. Our outlines can be like 15, 18 pages. And then everyone gets randomly assigned an episode, and you take your episode, you go away for 2 weeks, you write it, you come back, you work with everybody, rewrite it, and then that's the episode that you're credited on. But it's so collaborative. There's so much of everyone in every episode, like you might not get the episode that's really like a core idea that you pitched. But we're kind of, all just a blob anyway. There's not a lot of like, we're all just serving the realm kind of.
So it's hard to say, oh, that's kind of a Kate thing, or that's somebody else's thing, or can you point at certain things and say, ooh, that's all me?
Yeah, definitely I can, but I
Mhm.
think it's like tacky, so I try not
Okay.
to.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
my friends like to play that game
Mhm.
of it's usually like whatever like most inappropriate joke is like they can trace it back. It's a very straight line.
So the
Um,
inappropriate jokes straight or back to Kate?
Usually that's what it is.
Oh.
But yeah, there's like, there was, I mean, again, like I think it's like dorky, but like there were a bunch of t-shirts that said, you can't spell America without Erica. And that was like my husband like bought me the t-shirt because that was like my big line in one of these scripts. That was like, you don't get a lot of stuff that's like totally unadulterated. And so I had like matching t-shirts with my kid that said that until I was like too ashamed and like I gave them away.
So there must be a lot of research though. Like when you go take a script and walk away for 2 weeks, you must especially do you have to do a lot of research for it?
We usually do most of the research before we get to the actual script. By the time you're writing, like you better be it's not a lot of 2 weeks to write like a 70-page script or something is not a lot of time. So you better be pretty dialed in at that point. But yeah, we do a lot of research like in the early months of developing the season, and it's kind of up to everyone to go off and figure out what they think is the coolest or most interesting and bring it back and desperately pitch it to the group and see if you can get a foothold. And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't, and sometimes you can't. And then 3 weeks later, someone will just pitch the exact same thing that you said. And then you just have to go, I love that, which is
That
fine,
sounds
which
like that's work. That's the work world for sure. That's yeah,
it
can
it
relate.
is it is something that I had to learn how to do. I was like really obnoxious in the first season. Um, but I think everybody's settled down a little bit.
How do you define obnoxious in your first season?
Well, I had never written before with a group. Like I had no etiquette. There's like a lot of etiquette that goes into running a functional room. There's a lot of like managing, again, like this is just work, right? It's like people are really in a super vulnerable place because you're pitching stuff, a lot of stuff, times you're pitching stuff that's really personal to you. And so it's important for everyone to be like patient and respectful and like, and I just like came in there and I was like, that's dumb. Next. uh did not win me any allies. But I took a beating and I kept going. So I learned.
I'm just curious, a lot's been said and will continue to be said about the setting of the 80s, and which is obviously something that resonates strongly with more than a few of us here. I think I look at those kids, playing D&D, and I'm like, that was me at that age. I could have been one of those kids. Now I relate more to like Hopper, except for, being a cop and being a hero and stuff like that. But um, but as the series has progressed and evolved itself, do you have to try to make sure that you stay on that, the inspiration railroad, so to speak, like of the Spielbergs and the Stephen King stuff that it was sort of originally sprouted from, or do you find that Like, is there a drift as the show becomes its own thing, if you know what I mean?
I do. I do know what you mean. And I think that we do like bloom out into other territories every season. We have stuff that feels like more Goonies, or stuff that feels more John Carpenter, or stuff that feels more John Hughes, and I think that at the core, when pitches fly, when stuff really starts to click, it's because it feels like it has that Amblin core, which is really just like big-hearted adventure storytelling, and like that is and about friends who like don't betray each other, who actually stick up for each other, who take care of each other and like come together in the end. And I think that is something like that is inherent to the DNA of the show, that we never stray too far from our like core values as like a show.
And as well, on top of all that stuff, and it's probably just me becoming an adult and looking back on these things that are some of my favorite, and I've heard you mention it in other podcasts as well, doing our research, that it's that the growth and loss of innocence as you go through these experiences. Can you speak to that and how important that is to these stories?
Yeah, I mean, the whole show is based on that kind of bittersweet, like you said, like the loss of innocence, the coming of age. It has to be both things. It has to be the joy of childhood and the sorrow of losing that, but also recognizing the foundation that whatever childhood you have has given you to like grow and become a new person. And the pain of like letting go of all of that joy and magic and adventure. And we are here in this building right now. Everyone is like pretty emotionally facing all of that as our group together, where it's like it's okay and it's right and it's good to like move on and grow, and we all have our things. But yeah, it's like it's hard to leave the nest. And I think it's really a wonderful moment to be writing this last episode right now and be feeling these feelings that our characters are very much experiencing as the show comes to a close for the last time. So yeah, it's like, I mean, I'm not saying that I cry every day, but definitely, have.
Every other day.
Yeah, I mean, whatever, it's fine.
Totally.
Well, I want to ask you about that, but before I do, what about when writing, the characters that, you who wrote at the first season have changed as the actors have embodied them? Have you found that you've written differently because you've gotten to know these characters through the actors? Or are you writing for the actors now? Are there particular actors that you would write for differently now because you've got to know them better, either in person or through the show?
Yeah, I mean, through the show, like absolutely. And you look at the pilot of the of Stranger Things back when it was like Montauk, when there wasn't really a cast attached, and it's totally different, like Steve, as it's well recorded, was like a bad guy. I mean, he was like a really bad guy. Like in the pilot, the original pilot, his sexual encounter with Nancy was like, I would say like it's rape. Like it's like, it's like sexual assault.
Mhm.
And he was not someone that was ever intended on being redeemed. And then once they cast Joe Keery, who's an absolute, charisma atom bomb, the whole trajectory of the character altered. And we wrote to him, we wrote to Joe because it was such a joy to write to Joe. And the same thing happened with most new characters that we introduced as well, like Eddie and even Billy, Jonathan, everybody. We had a death in store for everyone that we eventually bailed on because we fell in love with these actors and their embodiments of the portrayals.
So how has the writers room evolved? And you were just saying you're at the last episode now, you're writing the last episode? Are different writers pulling for a certain thing they want to happen? Are you all kind of agreeing on where things should go? What is the writer's room like when you're wrapping this up?
I mean, it's because we're so late in the season, because it's the last episode, there's not like a lot of different paths that you can choose. Like we've built, we have the whole thing outlined. We've been building to this moment for a really long time. We've talked about it for literally years. Like how it's going to finish, how we're going to like land thematically everything that we have been trying to say as a series. About exactly what you were talking about the melancholy and, letting go and trying to keep the magic alive as you grow up and move on. And I think I mean, it's very much like us against the story. There's never like infighting that leads to like a non-compromise. Like, it's like we're all just like struggling desperately against the tangle of the finale and constantly just trying to like carve a path through for all of us, like it doesn't feel like we don't like really ever like hit a place where somebody feels really strongly that it should be one thing and somebody feels really strongly it should be something really different. Usually everyone gets kind of persuaded by the time, if you're like on the other end, which I've been on many times, the losing side, you get enough smart people pitching something really, really well. And it's like, you can't resist.
It's interesting, Kate, because you can hear a bit of the emotion that comes out of, the loss of a show or the transition to the next thing. And I would love it because there are people like us who know Stranger Things and know the characters and watch it. We also go through that sense of loss, right? Like you've lived it and ate it and slept and breathed it and everything. But if that emotion that you discuss here comes out through the writing, that could almost be a catharsis process for the viewers as well. So I kind of hope that that comes through in the final bit. That we can all experience that together.
I think I have very strong feelings about the very end of our final episode. And I think that, like I said, we've been talking about it for years of how to get it to be all of those things, and really like do justice to what the series has been for us and for, everybody who's worked on it and for everybody who's been a part of it, of watching it, and so we've taken it very seriously, but it hasn't been difficult because it is just that feeling, like we've all been there. And yeah, I mean, but we definitely had some wild versions, which someday I'm excited to talk about.
Just thinking about the nitty gritty of it as well too, and to go with the mandate of our podcast, the sort of sci-fi and horror aspects of the show, and the sort of the really seamless blending of the two. Is that something that the Duffer Brothers or the writer's room are always looking externally for inspiration, or do you find that you can dig up some new original, sci-fi goodness on your own as well too?
Ooh, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've never had an original thought in my life. Everything comes from something else. It can come from really unexpected places, like we're not constantly referencing other people's work. Like I love to do deep dives and weird medical research and like actual like hard science and see what kind of freaky, hive mind creature stuff we can draw off of. And so I'm not like we have in our midst like a very hardcore sci-fi guy who is amazing because he brings in all these like legendary Ursula Le Guin and, Red Mars. I mean, again, like I don't even know what he's reading. It's like so far beyond Dan Brown, Hyperion. I like couldn't even get through the first page of it. I was like, this is crazy. Um, but he brings in that and I kind of bring in my own thing and we put it all together. And yeah, I think we're always trying to do not the first idea. We're always trying to dig a little bit deeper and find something kind of unexpected. Um, But yeah, it's hard, man. Like, I mean, there's so much good sci-fi out there, and like at some point you're, whether you know it or not, you're referencing something.
Well, for our listeners that don't know, the Stranger Things stage production in London, whose idea was that? And were you like, how did you become the person to go to make this happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question I ask myself all the time. I was writing on the show. It was season 4. Stephen Daldry was like a huge fan of the show, and like had a vision to do it as a play. He went to Jack Thorne initially, who of course did Harry Potter and is responsible for bringing like real spectacle to the stage. And in addition to also being like a straight ahead, like very accomplished playwright. Um, and they brainstormed kind of like some big ideas that they brought to the Duffers, and they kind of worked out like some fundamentals, like the setting it in 1959, doing it the Hawkins High, where you can have all your adults be teenagers and kind of see their origin stories, basing it off of Henry Creel, you know, coming into his own and having this little romance. And then they kind of like pitched it over to me, which I really just thought was a bad idea. I was really pregnant with like my second kid, and it just seemed like I was like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? I'm not the obvious pick for this, but ultimately it needed, the way that the play is constructed is that it is being released in between season 4 and 5. So it needs to be in conversation with season 4 and season 5, but it also needs to stand alone as its own thing if you've never seen the show. And you also have to be able to see season 5 without seeing the play, but still feel like it's important to the story. So in order to like weave together all of these like muscle tissues, it had to be somebody in the room, because it's too complicated to do. Like it was almost too complicated to do anyway. But you really had to be there on the ground. Everything changes so much every day as we write, to like be super fluid and be able to reference things that are about to come, things that have come, and it was really a puzzle. It was like a Rubik's Cube, which I cannot solve, even one side of.
Well, it seems like you kind of did. You got to play out season
Well,
five's.
I can't solve a real Rubik's
Oh,
Cube.
okay, got it.
Same,
But I
same,
definitely
never.
solved, I think I got a couple sides on the play. And then I'm working on it right now. For Broadway, it's gonna come out on Broadway next year. So I'm rewriting it to try to get more of the sides of the Rubik's Cube, because there's always more to do.
So it's going to be a different play, is that right?
It's gonna have different stuff. It will have different set pieces. There's gonna be some different stuff in it, yeah.
Ooh, okay. And
And
so,
would this be because of what you're doing with the last season? So it kind of changes because
No, it's mostly just I was rewriting up until the last preview, which is pretty unusual, but it's a huge, very complicated piece of work, like logistically also. And we just ran out of time to implement all of the things that we wanted to do. We came to some ideas too late in the process to implement them. And so we get a second shot at it, which is actually, and which I did not know, is actually typical for plays. They usually say it doesn't settle until the third version, and then the third version is like the rollout that goes on tour. But that there's usually like pretty significant differences between the first and second productions.
I guess it is a medium that you can change it at any time.
You can change it at any time, which is so fun and so annoying. It's so exhausting that it's like having a kid. It's like the thing just won't, it's constantly needs something new. Like there's always another, you can always make it better.
What was it like seeing the play for the first time in London in December?
It was like pure joy. Everybody kept being like, "Oh, are you nervous?" Like, but I was nervous for the Duffers to see it. They saw it like in during previews like a few weeks before, and then it changed radically. Um, but I was more nervous for that viewing. By the time they had seen it and we got to opening night, like I felt really confident. We have some like we have some rickety bits in there, but I felt really good, and it was the crowd. It was a home team crowd. It was all Netflix and Sonia Friedman Productions, and like my family. I had like 15 people there, so it was like a really beautiful, like ecstatic seeing it. I mean, even seeing it with just like a Tuesday, night audience is still like electrifying because it's a really, visceral kind of shocking play. So there's a lot of people just start clapping in the middle of something happening, or they'll scream, or like, it's a really fun, immersive, a communal experience. And that opening night was like the pinnacle of, I mean, I was like, you can look at the pictures. You've never seen anyone so happy in your life. I was just walking around like my face hurt from laughing.
I haven't been able to see it because it's difficult for me to get to London, but I have heard others talking about this visceral experience that you're describing. For our listeners who might want to go see it, can you talk a bit more about that? Like, what is the visceral experience?
I mean, we really wanted to push the limit of the medium, and we wanted the play to stand really strong on its own and not just feel like it's a TV show that is better suited as a TV show. So we wanted to play with the idea of safety and danger, and feeling like when you're watching a show that's only, you can only feel so unsafe because it's locked away in a box. And we wanted to make the theater feel like it was very much part of the show, that it was part of a whole character, that anything could happen. Like it was like being in a haunted house, or like a live studio, like that you never really knew where it was going to come from next. And so we had a ton of fun, kind of like pushing the limits of that and just doing stuff that's never been done on stage. I mean, because I came at it from the place of writing the TV show, I had no respect at all for stagecraft and what's possible and what's not possible. But I was surrounded by all these maniacs who are at the very top of their field, who are only interested in doing what's considered impossible. Like that's their thing. And that's like the level at which they want to be challenged. So there were all these people around me just being like, yes, like let's do it. I mean, let's try it at least. And I think the result is something that is really like singular, it's really doesn't feel like anything else.
Hmm. I saw A Cursed Child in Broadway last year, and it was almost like it was a magic show. There
Yeah.
were parts where they could implement things that I don't even know how they did that in person, and it was the stage effects were magic, to me. So I can imagine what you're describing, Kate.
Well, we have the Cursed Child special effects guy.
Ooh.
Name is Jamie, and he is an absolute genius. And there is stuff that like I was in on every single tech rehearsal. I watched this show hundreds of times. I know how the sausage is made, and it's still like that's like the joy of like that's the proof of like a good trick. Because like I'll still watch it and be like, oh, it just appeared. Where did it come from? I know how it did, but look, it worked again.
Hey, Kate, I just wanted to ask too. You mentioned a few minutes ago about how the show can stand alone as well as being complementary to the series. And so I'm working my way through the series, the TV series, with my eldest daughter, but it's still too scary for my youngest daughter. But we
What are we talking? What are the ages here?
13 for the eldest,
Yeah.
and she's into it. But the 11-year-old is still a bit of a gentle
Yeah.
soul, and she's a bit like not into the jump scares.
Yeah.
But we also have a deferred March break trip coming up to London, believe it or not. And so, and my wife is a big music theater fan, and when we were going, she was looking for the shows, and I said, "Well, you know what else is playing in London?" And and so we looked, and she looked and saw the reviews, and so we have tickets. So I'm wondering, will the little one be okay, and will she get it since she hasn't watched much of the series?
Okay, I'm gonna say some things. One is I strongly recommend that you get through season four, all of
Okay,
season four before you see the play.
for the
It's
Vecna stuff.
all the Vecna stuff. It'll
Yeah.
make so much more sense. It'll be so much more fun because you can tell in the audience, you can feel who's seen it and who hasn't because they're just almost a step ahead and when reveals happen, they go, so
Uh,
it's really super fun to see. But the okay, so get through four.
yeah, I've seen it, and I think I can get my eldest to the end of it, but the little one probably not so
It's
much. But
scary,
yeah.
and I will say, like the play is scary. Like the play has some scary death and stuff in it that
I
is
think you
like
should just take me then, James. Just leave the kid behind. I'll go with you.
We can swap out. Yeah, we'll do that, Tristan. Yeah.
I don't want to traumatize. I don't want to over traumatize any
She'll
children.
be okay. She'll be fine. We'll get the therapist on speed dial after, and yeah, we'll be good.
If she sees it and then she wants to know how something is done to make her feel better, then you hit me up.
Okay. Thank you.
We can blame Kate.
Yeah.
I,
Although I did hear that you were the murderer of Sam Gamgee,
oh,
Bob, not the Demogorgon. It was you in person. Is that true?
it was me. I
Oh
did
my
it, and I would do it again.
gosh.
Because he is the sweetest little man. He's so kind. He was so helpful to me. I was just visiting set and they needed a stunt person and my arms were the right size. Like the visual effects guy came up and he was like measuring my arms like I was like the witch in the gingerbread house, you know? He was like doing this and he was like, they're perfect. And then he was like, can I have her? And the Duffers were like, you should ask her. And
That's a
so
little spooky.
it was totally weird. And then they like put dots all over me and then uh like laid down Sean Astin and they were like, kill him. And I was like, I am really out of my depth here. Like, so I was like kind of like scratching him and stuff. And then he was like, no, like I've done so much CG. Like, I'm gonna tell you exactly how to do it. Like, don't be afraid, like you're not gonna hurt me. And if you do hurt me, that's good because it'll look better. And like his whole family was there, like his cute wife and his two like cute kids, or like this little teddy bear family there. And I was like, is this okay? I was covered in blood. My hands were like covered in blood. And I was just like savagely like ripping him apart. And his kids were like on the sidelines being like, get him. um,
So just because this sounds really weird, I'm sure to a lot of people, is in the show it was the Demogorgon that killed him, but you had to stand in place of
yeah, so
that for the CG, right?
they digitally painted the Demogorgon over my movements. So it's my arms that are like doing this. But they just painted a Demogorgon on top of it in post. So
That's really cool.
so cool. It's like one of my favorite things. It was very fun. It was like 4 in the morning. It was like very surreal.
Although Sean, poor Sam Gamgee, we feel bad for him.
I mean, he had a great season.
And
Noble death.
he lives in every movie, so he's gotta take
He's
him out
got
in at least one.
Dude, well, just to say something about the writing process, the character of Bob before we met Sean Astin was supposed to die in episode like 3 in this very not it was not a good storyline. It didn't make any sense. But we were really like that was what we pitched to Netflix. Like that was what we had in the outline. And then once we started working with Sean, like he just kept getting extended like further and further until we finally got to the point of being like, we have to kill him. But yeah, I mean, he made a huge impact on the show just by being adorable and really good at his job.
It's interesting to hear that again, the character kind of driving the narrative a bit, the actor themselves a bit.
Yeah, he was gonna die in the woods. I think Will was gonna kill him, like I don't even really, I mean, it was very out there. Things changed. We had a whole storyline in season 2 that we just like eliminated. It was like an infection storyline. It ended up getting pushed to season 3. But we had all this body horror stuff in season 2 that we just like literally we were halfway through writing the season and we were like, there's too much. We just have to take it out. It was enormous amputation, like mid-marathon amputating.
So when you're dealing with these deadlines, there must be times where the finished product is still not quite what you wish you could do too, right? Like, oh, I wish we could have messed with that one a little bit more, but you kind of, it's done and got to move on.
Yeah, I think there's a certain point too where it's like it has to be taken away from you because it's very easy, especially on this show, I think, to overthink stuff, and that's a dangerous path. Like at some level, you have to be able to like step back and accept that it's not all going to work and make sense, and you're going to have to get away with some things and some logic you'll need to sacrifice for emotion and vice versa. And so it's like if you we've lost weeks and months, I'm sure, of time to just like spinning out about being like, but the radio station is too far from the police station, like how would they get there? Like we have so many conversations that are just like whose car are they in? Like we have like whole like weeks that are just like, where's Joyce's car? Like where's Jonathan's car? It's like it would blow your mind, the banality of it all.
We've got the Broadway production coming up. I want to know, do you have something that you're ready to pitch? What is the project that you want to write, direct? What do you want to make?
I weirdly have a bunch of stuff right now. I think because I'm like slowly backing out of Stranger Things. But yeah, I have a horror movie that I wrote a couple years ago that I need to do a rewrite on, but that I really want to do. Um, that's about like postpartum anxiety. And the idea comes from this really cool Inuit mythology, because like I'm from Alaska and I grew up around like a lot of Alaska natives and shamanism and stuff like that. That like when you give birth to a child, like the door to the spirit world opens so that the child's spirit can come through. But also like you have to be really careful and follow these taboos, because if you don't, like another spirit can also come through. And that spirit is like in my mythology is like a hungry, like motherless spirit that wants the mother also, and is like in competition with the baby for like the mother, everything, like sustenance and attention and all of this stuff. And it looks like, I don't know. I know you have a kid. I know you have 2 daughters. I don't know if you guys have kids.
We all do.
We
Yeah.
all have daughters. I have 3.
I have 2 daughters. Giving birth is psychotic. And I didn't know until I was literally pregnant that like you give birth and then you give birth to the afterbirth. This was all very surprising to me. Anyway, because it's all rooted in my own like warped experience, the creature of this creature feature is like, looks like afterbirth with these huge veins and these like weird, but it's cool because like a baby, as it grows and gets stronger and gets more of what it needs, it changes, it gets smarter, it can mimic things, it can mimic voices, it can shapeshift and have teeth and be monstrous. And so
Wow.
that's like what I want to do.
And I see practical special effects too. And it's
Practicals,
yeah, wow.
straight up, like old school practicals. I want to shoot it in Alaska. I want to, it's like small enough that we could do. It's mostly like a woman and her husband a little bit and a little bit of family, but like mostly in this house, as you are when you're postpartum for the first 3 months, you're just on your own. Uh, or are you?
Are you envisioning a full-length film or a short?
This is a feature.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds
And,
great. Wow.
and you direct this one as well?
This is something I want to direct. Yeah.
Hmm.
This is my big passion project. I'm like on a mission to like talk about postpartum in a way that people can connect to, because I think people really check out when you're like, oh, like sad moms, like I don't care. That sounds exhausting. So I want to try to like Trojan horse like my public service announcement in through like some really gross, like weird stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. As we've discussed in the show and Stranger Things, it's all of those things, those real world awful traumas that
Yeah.
sci-fi and horror can address in such a, as you said, Trojan horse it. It's great.
Yeah, that's so I really want to do that. And then I'm also messing around with a unicorn movie as fathers of daughters. I'm sure that you realize that there's a huge lack of live action unicorn films.
We need more.
Um, we
I
need more.
remember Legend with Tom Cruise. That was
Okay,
my
I
big
loved
unicorn.
Legend, and
So did I.
I just rewatched it, and I think it holds up. It's crazy.
Tim Curry in
Tim
that.
Curry as Darkness, it doesn't get any better. And it's like a weird, freaky tone poem of like, glitter and elves, and then the darkness stuff is like, it's so bad. And if you watch it again, just read a quick like Wikipedia blurb about like the director's cut, because there's a scene at the beginning that shouldn't be there where you see darkness. And in the original version of the movie, you don't see darkness until the girl, I can't remember her name, Ferris Bueller's girlfriend,
Right.
Lone, is like, it's a wide shot, and she's like, she's been kidnapped and she's in his castle, and she's like prone, like on the floor. And then like through this mirror, like darkness is like huge red, like meaty, jacked, like centaur body, like comes through, and it's
The
like
hooves. I remember the
the
hooves.
hooves. Yeah, and then it's the huge and the horns, and it's like super hot. It's like really sexy and really scary. And it's just like, yeah, I think Legend is sick. Anyway, so I want to do that, and then I want to do this old person rom-com that's like a Nancy Meyers movie. So
Oh, amazing. Old person rom-com.
Nice.
those are my things.
I love old
Nice.
person rom-coms.
Me too.
Like what was that one where like Morgan Freeman and Michael Douglas, they all go to Vegas, the Lost Vegas. That was great.
Yeah.
And a couple other famous old guys that, yeah, go to Vegas one last time. And I think I'm just preparing to be old, and I'm ready.
We're there. Yeah, we're
Ready to
ready.
get there already.
I feel like I've been there. I feel like I was
Yeah.
born.
One final question. How does Stranger Things end?
Oh, buckle up. Do we have another hour?
Unicorns.
I wish, dude.
Unicorns, old people,
Afterbirth,
afterbirth, placenta, all kinds of stuff.
the placenta attack. Anyway.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right, cool. Well, thank you guys. This was fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Thank you for joining us today. If you are here at the end and you haven't subscribed to the show, followed the show, left a review, please do so. Tell a friend, anything. It really helps us out. We really appreciate you. Next episode is our 100th episode. Be there for that one. Thank you for being here today. Thank you, Kate. Until next time.